Welcome, everybody. This is our Komprise live demo series. We've been calling this Office Hours with Benjamin Henry, our field CTO. And many of you, I think, already know Ben. And we have a really interesting mix of customers, partners, people that are newer to Komprise, trying to learn more about what we do. Today, we're going to focus on Elastic Data Migration and some best practices. If you're new to this series, this is our third one. You can go and check out cost savings and tiering, super relevant right now, given some of the price increases we're seeing in the industry and the benefits of tiering. Smart data workflows, a whole overview on different use cases, including our new Kappa data services, which is really interesting and has a lot of potential for partners as well to build custom solutions with Komprise. And then our next one we're going to do in June, focus on deep analytics. But today is migration. So let's jump into it. Ben, what are we gonna cover today? Why is this important?
Yeah, thanks, Darren. So really, it starts with analysis. 80% of migrations, um, most of the time, should be spent with the analysis. You get the analysis right, everything else kind of flows together. A lot of times you hear customers talk about migrations or they get the knot in your stomach. Some might even be getting a knot in their stomach right now thinking about data migrations. And a lot of times it's because we jump right into it. So let's talk about assessments and how they can be accomplished and how to make things a little bit easier, which leads into the next one, the know before you go approach. So we're going to talk about oops, we started. Okay. So we're going to talk about the know before you go, how Komprise can handle lift and shift, the traditional migrations versus smart migrations. And then we'll get into some admin topics, talking about the audit logs, chain of custody reports, mixed mode migrations, keep latest versions, SID mapping, a few others. We'll kind of be dynamic and roll through them here. So as
And
we
most
talk
of the
about,
time, we're going to be in the product. So
yeah,
again, bring your questions, use the chat panels, chime in there, and we'll try to get to them as quickly as we can. So let's jump in.
cool. Yeah. So speaking of planning assessments, I'm going to use the analogy of a network migration. If you're doing a network migration or a network refresh, um, most of the time you wouldn't walk into the data center, big set of bolt cutters and start just cutting cables. You would start with a site survey. So a lot like in that situation for data migrations, you want to do an assessment. And to help with those assessments, we even offer something extra called ACE, Assessment of Customer Environment. This operates outside of Komprise, and it's going to take into consideration the performance of your hypervisor, where you're hosting the Komprise observers, the network, and the storage, whether it's on-prem, in the cloud, object, NAS, NFS, SMB. It's going to take all aspects into account to say, okay, what kind of performance do I have even before I start, so I know what that's going to look like when I start getting the modeling of my data. So for the ACE white paper, talk to your account team. They're happy to send it in your direction. So really with that, Darren, I think we're going to jump into the product now, right? Yeah.
Let's do it.
Cool. Let me go ahead and share my screen out here.
And I have to say, every time I see you do a demo, I pick up something new. I like how you focus a lot on data stores and how to configure
Yeah.
That's something that I don't know if it's being as well leveraged as it could be by a lot of our customers.
That's perfect. Yeah, it's one of the areas I'm going to demonstrate is how to leverage the data stores page to do most of your migration planning and your assessment for you. So when you log into Komprise, the first page you land on is the plan page. This talks about your heat map and goes into a smart migration, which we're going to lead into. But let's jump over to data stores. So to populate this page, we have to go to data stores and we have to talk about our storage. So if this is a brand new installation, you would want to go over to add data store. From here, you choose your storage type. I'm just going to pick an Isilon here, for example, and I'm going to put in my cluster management credentials. So cluster management IP address or host name. I can give it a custom display name if I don't want to use the host name. And then I give it the credentials. And what that does is it discovers my entire landscape, the entire cluster. It's going to find the access zones. It's going to find the shares and exports, the protocols, and it's going to line all those up for me. Same goes for, I'll pick another one. We've got Pure NetApp. So NetApp, same thing. You're going to go out, find the SVMs. Within the SVMs, you're going to find all the shares. You're going to find all the volumes, exports. All that discovery is done for you. So I already have this pre-populated.
And Ben, I'm curious. We do a lot of migrations off of Isilon. We do a lot of tiering off of Isilon. Do you have any trends you're seeing in terms of what are the most common migration use cases you're seeing right now?
So I'm seeing a little bit of a shift in the industry right now. Storage is in an interesting spot in the world right now. There's a lot of challenges with memory. So I'm seeing a lot of customers pivot more to the cloud right now, where storage and pricing is not an issue today.
Okay.
All right. So let's get back to our data stores. So I've already discovered my storage. I've got my Isilon cluster, my NetApp clusters. I've got a Windows server. I've got a Pure FlashBlade. I got a bunch of things here. And I've already enabled some for analysis, but let's talk about how you enable them. So if I wanted to pick, let's say, the Pure Flash Array, all I have to do is either select everything, or if I only want to turn on one, I simply select it and click enable. I get the confirmation that it's been enabled. And what that's going to do is it's going to put that share or export in a pending status as it's queuing up for analysis. When the analysis starts, this will turn to a graph. And then when it's done, I'm simply going to see the moon saying, hey, it's between analysis, and I get the statistics on that. Speaking of statistics, let's go to columns. So all of these columns at the top here are customizable on a per user session. So I'm going to click on columns, and I get to bring over whatever I want from the left side to the right, or take things away by dragging from the right to the left. And for migrations, I like to order this so that I get to see the share path first. The share path is not the share name, because I already have that. It's the actual relative path it is on the cluster, on the server, whatever it might be. That helps me understand so I should say it's more like the volume path or the ISI path is a great analogy there. So I can say, okay, if I'm going on an Isilon, I can see exactly where it is in the file system. Same thing on a NetApp. I can see all the volume structures, the queue trees. I have all that information available to me. So share path, then I layer in directories. Then I start with items, the analysis, the protocol, the cold data, the percentage of cold data. By default, the setting is 1 year. So any data that hasn't been accessed to 1 year or more is represented as cold data, but you can customize that. And the rest kind of stacks in however you want. So I'm going to go ahead and hit close because I've already customized this. So fast forward, I have all my clusters here, all my file servers here, shares are enabled. I want to start planning for my migration. So what am I going to do? I'm going to hit this report button at the top. This is the easy button for doing your assessments. Everything that's in this screen is exportable, and I already have it pulled right here to start talking about it. So I get what type of storage, the status, whether it's active or not, the sites, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud, the type of cluster, the file server, the share name, the share path, we talked about that already, directories, items. So when I start talking about directories, the number of items, I'm starting to model my data a little bit to understand how complex or easy that data migration is going to be. The protocols, the percentage of cold data, cool. All I have to do after I go and show you the rest of the modeling is I come over here and I add a few more columns. I put in the destination share that I want this to use, and then I like to plan in what are called waves. So those are your cutover events. So I put in the destination share, and I put in the wave that it's been assigned to. This is my migration workflow. It's my planning spreadsheet that I get to use for my change controls, talking with customers. All of it is done right here for me. So let's talk about that additional modeling, that assessment that helps me plan for migrations, successful migrations. And jump back to the plan tab for a minute. And over here, we talked about the heat map. So this is the data donut. My analysis is done. This is populated. And I get to see, all right, do I want to do a lift and shift? Or is there something preventing me from doing a lift and shift where I have to offload data before I can do that? Again, we talked a little bit before about industry trends. Storage right now is an all-time high pricing. So maybe it doesn't make sense to move all of my data, all my cold data with my hot data. Maybe it makes sense to tier and archive some of that cold data first, allowing me to reduce my capacity, reduce my ongoing spends so I can afford that next round of storage, or I can afford to take the next step and go into the cloud. So by default, I already have this set up that says anything not accessed in 3 months or more, in a year or more, is set up to show this purple line right here. So I can also change that and say, all right, if I don't want to do that, let me model some of these other ones here. So I want to take this one out to, let's say, 3 years or 2 years. So my data savings would be 631 terabytes or 40%. If I want to be more aggressive and say, okay, what about 3 months? Well, then I would be at 838 terabytes or 54% of my data. I get the quantity of data, the number of files, the percentages. It's all right here. You'll also notice I get a cost analysis with 3-year projections on the right-hand side. I have full control of that cost analysis to help me plan for my migrations and doing what we call a smart migration, which is where you offload the cold data first, and then you proceed with the hot data. All right. So,
And why would I just trying to catch up to that?
yeah,
Why would I do that? Why would I offload the cold data first? What are the benefits? Because you're here we are talking about migration, but you're actually zeroing in on tiering.
yeah, again, that's goes the difference with lift and shift. Komprise can do that. Smart data migration, Komprise can do that. So we're talking more about the smart data migration, which says, all right, does it make sense to move everything as is? Or from a cost perspective, from a files perspective, from a time perspective, does it make more sense to offload that cold data first? Did I answer your question there, Darren?
Gotcha. And then if I'm setting up my data stores now based on this decision to do a smart migration, would I add anything different to my columns in data stores if I'm now actually going to do some tiering first?
Yep, and that talked about that cold column that we already added earlier. So we actually get a percentage of cold data right here. So for my migration planning worksheet, I already know that this share, let's see, this share right here, 52% of the data hasn't been accessed in a year or more. So again, that kind of drives a conversation of, does it make sense? If 50% of that data hasn't been accessed in a year or more, should I be bringing it with me?
Gotcha. Great.
Okay. So again, that assessment. So we talked about the age of data, lift and shift, smart migration, start leaning into that a little bit more. On the usage tab, what I'd like to do is I like to look at this from a file count perspective. So you can look at it from a size perspective or a file count perspective. So I'm going to switch this to the file count perspective. And I can see the biggest category of files that I'm looking at are video files. And I can see it's somewhere just south of 4 million. Now, I also get that modeling in here too. So I get the heat map, I get the number of files, but I also get that modeling of how much I'd be saving if I did a smart migration first. So videos, largest category, followed by archive, log, documents, presentation, and it just keeps going down. Well, this is the disruptor. This tells me how disruptive migrations can be. The size of data. Large files move fast. Small files tend to move slower, but we're going to talk about how we get around that in a little bit. So modeling this out, I can see that the largest type of file from a size perspective is in that 10K to 100K range. A lot of small files. I can also see my top owners. So a lot of customers, a lot of partners want to kind of do that show back, shame back a little bit about who's the biggest disruptors in the environment, who's storing the most amount of data. You get quick access to that, the groups they belong to, and then the directories. Something else I like to showcase here as well is a lot of platforms out there will only work with single byte characters, not Komprise. Multi-byte characters are supported even in the file and folder names. And then we get the files by top share. Okay, so from there, we also talk about the analysis metrics. So we talked about it being a lot of small files. Well, right here, the directories. 2.7 million directories, average 10 files per directory, average size of a directory, 459 megabytes, 27.5 million files, average size of a file across the entire spectrum is 45 megabytes. Is there any symbolic links? Because there are some times when you work with storage technologies, some support symlinks, some don't support links. So we call those out right here. Now, this is showing me across my entire landscape. I can be specific. I could say, okay, I only want to see specific shares. So you get to see and choose what shares you want to model in this situation, or again, leave it set to all. We also talk about any exclusions. And then if analysis was running, I would get this other metric called latency. And it's telling me how fast or slow we're able to communicate with the storage, which goes back into that ACE assessment that you would want to run from the very beginning. If you have high latency, there's something in there as a bottleneck. You want to solve that before you start your migration because you're going to have a painful experience if you're trying to move data over long distances with 100 milliseconds of latency. Let's help you solve that up front. All right, so we have everything exported. We talked about the modeling and the analysis here. Let's actually jump into a migration itself. So pretty easy to set up. Migration tab at the top, add migration. You choose your source. So in this situation, I'm going to say, I'll pick on Isilon for a second. So that's my source. Some advanced features here. You can also set up multiple migrations at once. I'm just going to do a single one for the convenience and for time. Next, I'm going to choose my destination. So in here, I'm going to choose a NetApp. I can also create a new share automatically. So if I don't have the shares pre-populated on the NetApp, I can have Komprise create them for me. Already got this one here. I'm going to click next. I can choose entire share or subdirectory. So same thing on the source. You can choose an entire share or you can choose a subdirectory. Fan in, fan out, support both of those. I'm going to click next. And here's where we get into a couple types of migrations. So there's two types of standard migrations. You're seeing the first one because I have no data in the destination already. It's a blank export. So that's called a standard migration where the destination will match the source. If I had started this migration with another application, another tool, RoboCopy, any of those, Komprise can pick up where that left off, so you don't have to recopy that entire data set. Really useful in WAN-based migrations, moving to the cloud where you don't want to have to recopy everything again. Again, we'll pick up where that left off. That'll show up automatically if it detects data in the destination. Also, something here called keep latest version. Keep latest version is really cool for those applications like in healthcare with Epic or in the media industry where you constantly have to write new data and downtime is impossible. You might have a 5-minute cutover window. Perfect. That's where keep latest version comes into play. So you do all your migration planning, you do your iterations, getting all the data on the other side, you get to that cutover window. Your cutover window can be as small as it takes you to update the share path in the application. Then when the application starts writing to the new destination, you do keep latest version, which means it will keep the latest version of the file. So if the source has a newer version than the destination, it's copied. If the destination has a newer version because the application already wrote it, then it stays there and does not get overwritten. So gets you a near zero cutover time. All right, I'm going to do standard migration. We're going to click on next. You have a couple different scheduling options. The default is what we call an interval, which is 24 hours from completion of the last iteration. It'll kick off, and you can customize that if you want to be shorter than that, or time of day. So you want this to start 7 p.m. every evening. You can do that. Or again, you have the flexibility of how frequently or infrequently do you want this to run. I'm going to use interval. You can say start the migration automatically at the end of this iteration or the end of this wizard, or I can say turn this off and I want to stage this migration. So we'll stage it and I'll show you how to start it manually. I'll click on next. You get to give this a name. A lot of times I like to put in here what wave it belongs to. So I have a grouping of all my migration jobs based on a searchable term, the wave. The audit log location, by default, the audit logs of Komprise go into the destination. You have the ability to centralize that and put it in an S3 bucket, NFS, SMB. I always recommend to enterprise customers, move that to a central location, give access to your migration partners, give access to your auditors, your legal team, whoever needs access to those logs, give them access. They don't have to go digging for them. And what's really cool about our audit logs is within them, it's always going to contain the validation. So if you have the validation toggle turned on, which by default it is, for NFS, it's going to be MD5. For SMB, it's going to be hash value. Every time we copy a file, every time we do any changes, it's going to rewrite or revalidate that file. And we're going to write that in those audit logs. So the audit logs contain every single action of every single iteration for the duration of your migration jobs. And in that is that validation. So you always know the file has been validated. If it fails validation, it fails the file and automatically starts on the next iteration. So we also offer a chain of custody. So you already have all the audit logs, all the validation in there. Sometimes you need a final report that says, okay, I know I have all the audit logs, I know I have all the validation, but for compliance reasons, I have to rerun that validation during my final iteration. You have that capability. All right. In this one, you can migrate the access times. You can turn on or off POSIX. If this was an SMB migration, you could turn on or off whether you want ACLs here as well. Sometimes you want to standardize migrations because you're coming out of a legacy environment or it's an M&A situation where you acquired a company and you don't want to copy all that stuff with it. You want to reset the permissions. So you would simply turn that off, set the permissions you want on the destination. So as the data is written, it takes on all the new permissions. All right, let me click on next here. I get a review of all the criteria I have selected, and I can simply click on Create Migration. Now, again, this is staging the migration. It doesn't start automatically, so let's fire this one up. Then click Start, and there we go. that will start running that migration in the background. Why don't we
Hey,
walk
Ben,
through, Darren?
quick question.
Yeah,
I see the benefits of things like chain of custody reporting, but did some of those features, the auditing features, did they impact performance at all?
they do. So that's worth talking about, is that the chain of custody by design will rerun the full validation on that final iteration. So it will take longer to run the chain of custody. But that's where I point our customers back to our audit logs. So all the validation, the proof, everything is in those audit logs. So once our customers understand that we go out of the way to build these audit logs that contain all that validation from the very start, so there's no surprises at the end, a lot of customers, their requirements are satisfied by the audit logs, and they don't have to run the chain of custody. So it's worth knowing both options. But again, audit logs contain everything for the historical event of your migration versus the chain of custody says, I want to rerun validation on everything now. So that does lead to a longer cutover, worth calling out.
Okay, and I know
Thanks, Derek.
you're moving fast through some of these things, so I do want to encourage people, the live folks here today, use the chat, pop in questions,
Yeah, please.
try to get to them.
All right, let me go ahead here. And one of the things I didn't call out, which is another advanced feature, is I'm now building an SMB migration, kind of as we're going back and forth there, because I want to demonstrate this option, SID mapping. Came out quite a while ago, but for SMB migrations, we also have the ability to do SID mapping. Again, M&A, legacy Active Directory environments, whatever it might be, local users within the file servers, you can now do SID mapping. You simply walk through the workflow, you click on download template, you say SID 123 equals SID 456, and we do all of that in flight. And again, no surprises at the end. When the file is copied, SID mapping occurs, reducing your overall cutover windows. All right.
Sorry, just can you tell me why I would want to do SID mapping?
Yeah, again, that was for like if you have like an M&A activity where you're acquiring a company and you're merging Active Directory environments, or you have legacy domains that need to roll back into one, local users to Active Directory users. Those are the real common situations for SID mapping.
Okay.
All right, so I'll just finish this one up. I'll hit start migration, let that run there in the background. All right, I already have this one set up, and I can see this is the first migration that I created, and it has completed its first iteration. So when I load the details of that job, I can see the source, the destination, the data sizes match, the directories match, the number of files match, the number of symbolic links, everything matches. I get, again, the location of the log files, and I get the iteration details. So every single iteration, the details are recorded right here. The changes that are copied, the type of changes, the number of data items that were scanned, if there was any errors, if there's any changes to my settings. So I can always go up to this little three dot here on the right-hand side. I click edit settings, and I can change the migration settings. So I can say, maybe I don't want to do validation this time. I can simply turn it off. And what happens when I hit save, I can start the next iteration, and I'm going to see an asterisk in that setting column showing that somebody changed a migration setting. Here we go. So I look at settings for iteration 2. Now validate the transfer is turned off, and that's the iteration where somebody turned it off. Again, enhancing that audit trail. Who changed the settings in my migration? Well, we can see it right there. Somebody changed that, and the audit logs will tell us that information. All right, iteration 2 is up and running. So I'll let that run to completion. Let's see here. That's running the first iteration. Fantastic. At any point in time, if I want to start my final, all I have to do is say start final, and it'll jump into the final iteration. At that point, you want to lock out your source, give exclusive access to the destination, do your final iteration before you cut over. That's the progression of a migration. Right. Darren, what other advanced features do we want to talk about?
Well, when you first walked through the wizard, you skipped a couple, I think, that could be useful just to review.
Sure.
Multiple migrations, that's one. I mean,
Yep. Yeah, we talked about that
a
real
lot.
quickly. Yep. Yeah, I did skip over it. I talked about it briefly, but yeah, simply all you do is you choose which sources that you want. Pick a couple of them here. I'm gonna hit apply and hit next. Oh, because I did different protocols. So give me a second here. Get back out of that. I see if I got it right now. I'm still mixing protocols. Oh, those are in migrations as well. Sorry, I'm using those shares in other migrations at this point. But all you would do is choose your sources. And then on the next screen, you get a template. In that template, you choose what are your destinations, and then we fill in the rest.
Are there's, we have a lot of partners on the call who
Sure.
are certified, been trained up on Komprise. And then we also have some customers on the call and some folks that are new. So I'm wondering about, does Komprise run migrations for customers as a professional services, or would partners do that? What are some things partners need to really know in addition to what you've already covered?
Yeah, again, so Comprise provides the platform, and that's a great opportunity for our partners to engage with their customers to perform the migrations on their behalf. Did I answer your question there, Darren?
Yeah. So then maybe you can talk about some admin. I guess you're in the admins
I
right
am right.
now.
Yes, I'm just
Yeah.
switching gears
Let's.
here for a second. I talked about the audit logs, for example, and right here is where you specify. So system site settings, and here I can centralize those audit logs I was talking about earlier. Same thing, chain of custody reports. I can centralize those anywhere I want. I'll just choose SMB, you put in the path, hit save, and now you've removed them from the destination folder and put them in a central location.
All right. Well, we're starting to get a few good questions now. So,
Cool,
what
great.
does the data scanning and migration, what does the data scanning and migration work? I think it means how. Is it one or more VM appliances? Maybe
Yeah,
talk about observers.
great question. So if you think of Comprise as a hub and spoke architecture, the observer is the hub, the director is one of the spokes. So the observer is the component that the customer would host on-prem and place as close to the storage as possible for performance reasons. That again stays inside the customer's four walls and provides all the data movement. As far as the number of observers, it goes back to the number of shares and how fast the customer wants to move their data from point A to point B. Comprise is built on parallel compute. And actually, we just received a new patent for what we call elastic shares that allows us to distribute the workloads dynamically across the number of observers. The default deployment would be 2 observers. The more observers you add, the more parallel compute you get to provide elasticity for those migration jobs.
Here's one. If you want to do a test cutover during a maintenance window, including writing data to the new source, then roll back to the original source. Can Comprise be set to overwrite from original source to new source without having to redo the entire data migration?
Those would be 2 separate jobs. That's as simple as it is. Create 2 jobs. You just pause one job, reverse the workflow, run the other job.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there anything else in the actions drop down here from data stores that's worth mentioning, or actions here within the screen?
Any other, run that by me again, Darren? Any other actions?
Just on that actions column, I think you covered most things.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, I did not cover that. So that's a good call out. So actions, I'll give an example here. So the actions column on the right-hand side is a singular action. So if I only want to take action on one share, I would use that actions menu on the right-hand side. If I wanted to do multiple actions, that's the checkboxes, but the actions menu goes to a different location to kind of call it out to be different. So I'm going to say I want to take action on 2 shares, this one and this one. And you can see when I put a checkbox in here, it disables the singular action and moves the function to the top of the screen. And I get to say, is this, if I had a cluster checked, is this a cluster action or is this a share action? And then all of those options appear right here.
Right. Okay. I think let's go to our wrap up. I don't see a lot of questions come in. I think you've covered a lot of
Real quick,
ground.
Darren, I did see a really, really good one that I want to address as fast as I can.
Oh, I see one too. Yeah.
Yep. So there was a question about orphan data and finding that. So under the deep analytics screen, you would run a new query. You go to owner and say undefined owner. And when you hit run, this is going to build you a report of all the orphaned data that you can evaluate with your internal teams, your customers, your partners to decide what you want to do with that. And maybe you want to do SID mapping to assign a new owner. All right.
Well, also maybe show the reports tab because we try to make these available, certain reports available. Now, some of these do require the full platform license, so it goes beyond just the migration use case.
Yep. So I'll hit save here and download.
So this is the orphan data report.
Yep, I showed you the technical way to look at it. And now this is more of a management report that shows you, again, how much is this orphan data costing me? You get the heat map, You get the number of files, the size of the orphan data, the cost. Again, you get to control those costs, and then you get more information about the shares that the data came from. And then again, you get a list of all the shares here as well. So
I know one of the popular reports we have is showback. Is
Yeah.
that mainly related to tiering, the tiering use case, or would there be a use case for showback for migration?
Yeah, even for migration, it's worth using the showback report from here to just demonstrate how much are these shares costing. Even if you do nothing, how much do these shares cost on a yearly or annual basis? Let me hit download report. I'll give you an example here real quick. I'm kind of bouncing around. All right. A lot like that orphan data report, you get the heat map, how much my data is costing me. I get my top shares. I get the top users. So again, that plan page is pulled over here in more of an executive report to talk about how much my environment is costing me on an annual basis. And you get to customize. Do you want to run this an entire site, an entire cluster, a singular share? You have the full flexibility to model that right here.
Awesome. Anything else you want to cover, Ben?
No, I think we're kind of running tight on time here, kind of bouncing around a little bit. So why don't we jump back to the slides, kind of recap what we talked about. So migrations, 80% of it's planning. If you nail the planning, the actual migration itself isn't that bad. All right. Got a lot of partners with us today. So we talked about assessments, leveraging Komprise for the analytics, the data stores page, the plan page, that helps you build out that assessment on what the migrations are going to look like and about how much time it's going to take you to accomplish those jobs. In addition we talked about ACE as well, the performance. You get to build the model the time a little bit. So talk to your account team, get access to ACE, get access to the analysis, start running those assessments. There's plenty of videos out there. Darren, I'll let you plug the YouTube channel here.
Yeah, well, we put a section on the website under resources called best practices. We're trying to make this as easily findable as possible. You can obviously subscribe to YouTube, but Ben and I did a series last year on unstructured data migration practices, best practices, and we broke down some of the things he's covered today into shorter sections. So that might be useful as something to look at. Yeah, so let's just wrap with why Komprise for unstructured data migrations, Ben.
Yeah, again, we talked about this a little bit earlier. We leaned in on it earlier. The core of Komprise is built on parallel compute. We're 27 times faster in the NFS SMB world. Patented technologies. So we have received our patent for Elastic Share, which again allows you to distribute those workloads across n number of observers. And it's not just about migrations. So if we think more broadly about unstructured data management, we talked about the smart migrations as well. Does it make sense to tier archive, or do I need to do a lift and shift? Which leans into a little bit about the flash stretch. So Darren, do you want to give a quick plug for the flash stretch assessment we have going right now?
Well, it's just a different way to analyze your current estate, right? Given the high cost of flash, trying to really focus not just on the cold data, but look at how your hot data and where your hot data is running and how to actually get more capacity out of what you've got. So I think right now everybody's trying to stretch their resources and get maximum value. Budgets are tight and costs are high. So I think some of the analytics you're talking about can really be part of that.
Cool. And like the title says, it's not just about migrations. Komprise provides a full platform from the analysis to the migrations to AI workflows, sensitive data detections. Darren, you touched on Kappa Data Services earlier. Think of Kappa Data Services as anything you want to do on a per file action. Komprise provides the platform for you to run that. Partners can write the Python, we can write the Python, customers can write their own Python. It's a really unique feature and function.
Yeah.
And then,
I mean, unstructured data migrations are hard, right? There's no two ways about it. And, talking to our product management team last week about this, key message from them is the focus is on trying to make it simple, easy, and fast, right? Those are kind of the core principles of how we think about building up this product for you all.
Yep. Discover the technical debt up front.
So hope this was useful, folks. We're going to do this monthly. Our next one, we're going to move up and make it on June 10th. We're going to focus on deep analytics in the global metadata base. You can see some of the different use cases here. But if you have topics you want us to cover on one of the office hours sessions with Ben, do email me and we'll get it on the schedule. Any final thoughts, Ben?
No, I appreciate you putting these together, Darren, and I love the participation. This is these sessions are designed to be interactive, so always submit questions, and we're happy to answer them live on the sessions.
And let me do one thing. Just sort of the tell them what we told them. This is the
Yeah.
flow of your demo. Just kind of walk us through again how you covered this, and it's just interesting for folks to maybe do this themselves.
Yeah. So again, you start with the data stores page, discover your shares, your clusters, your all your file servers, your object storage. You walk through, discover that. You customize it a little bit. You turn around and flip over to the plan page to model out, am I doing a lift and shift? Am I doing a smart migration? Either way, I get to see my capacities. I get to see my file counts. Again, I'm modeling that assessment to help me understand what is my migration going to look like. And then back to the data stores, export that page, add 2 columns to that CSV that's already pre-built for you, destination share, when my cutover event's going to occur. That's your full assessment of what your migration is going to look like. And then you jump into the migrations themselves.
All right, good stuff. Thanks, Ben. Good
Sure.
information. Hopefully this is useful for everyone, and we look forward to the next one.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great day.